All right, so we are going to be thinking about audiences in chapter 3 here. Okay, so thinking about audiences. This is kind of goes with what we've talked about so far in terms of media convergence and awareness and recognition and being in the right place at the right time for the right groups of people. Um, so when you are developing your campaigns, thinking about that audience is going to be very, very important. With Google Analytics, with the analytics that the social media platforms provide us on the business end of things, you can learn a lot about who those users are, right? Who are those audiences that you're reaching? And so you need to think about those audiences, right? The ones who are engaged, the ones who are following and liking and interacting. But you also need to think about those potential audiences, right? The ones that you can reach, the ones who may have some familiarity, maybe maybe they recognize the company but haven't purchased anything from them. Um, and how can you attract those audiences and pull them from those other spaces where they may spend their money? So the way that audiences often break down is your current ones, right? Your current customers, who are those who actively buy from your company, the ones who are return customers, repeat customers, those who feel a very strong sense of brand loyalty, the ones who are competitive users, right? The ones who are buying from your your competitors' brands, right? So when you are thinking about that SWOT analysis, um, when you start thinking about the threats, right? The T of the SWOT, who are those competitors, right? And who are those audiences and who are those users that you could perhaps, work to, um, to entice. What about your company could be used to persuade those who are buying, engaging, interacting, or feeling loyal to those competitors, and what can you do to bring them over to your organization? Your non-users are ones who aren't interested at all, don't have a need, perhaps, don't have an interest, don't have any sort of reason to perhaps be thinking about your company. And it depends, depending on the company, this could be, it all depends on the industry, it all depends on interest, what it is that you're selling. Um, and then those who are feature-based users, right? Who don't necessarily see a need within whatever sort of industry you're in. So it's a variety of audiences here that you may need to think about, but finding ways to reach both those current ones and those competitive ones, and even the non and the feature based can be really valuable. Um, so when you start to break down the way that consumers or audiences perhaps engage with a company or with a brand, Starbucks is a good example here. That they are a company that would like to be daily, have their consumers and their customers be daily users, but sometimes that's not necessarily the case. Um, and so, as you can see in this little like diagram here, that we have three different categories of users, consumers of Starbucks, right? Your current ones, and even within that, can be broken down to the light customers, right? The customers that show up maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. Your medium, maybe they come 2 or 3 times a week, and your heavy, right? Those who are there every day. But they're consistent, right? They're current. They're maybe not there every single day, but at least when they think about buying coffee, that they come to Starbucks as opposed to Dunkin' Donuts or Wawa or something like that. Um, your lapsed users are going to be the ones who perhaps haven't been there in over a month, maybe even longer. That maybe they have no interest in the Starbucks coffee or the products that they sell. Maybe they bought Starbucks at an airport just because it was convenient, but they're more brand loyal to something like Dunkin' or again Wawa or something like that. Maybe they make coffee at home. So they're familiar with the brand. Perhaps they've purchased from the brand in the last maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months, maybe in the last 1 or 2 months. But they are not necessarily those who are there every single day buying coffee, buying cake pops, buying, I don't know, like flavored mystery drinks of all kinds. And then lastly, you have your non-users, right? Those who aren't even interested in coffee, those who don't drink it, those who don't see the need, don't, feel that the prices are too expensive. Um, but all of them in some capacity can be valuable audiences, right? Valuable target groups. And that, how you reach those audiences is going to be based on frequency, right? How frequent are people coming to your stores? And so Starbucks is, at its start, right, at the kind of start of the brand was coffee, right? Just plain old coffee, nothing fancy. But as they've grown, that they have evolved into more than just like a regular old coffee place. And if you compare them to Starbucks or to Dunkin', you can kind of see how that works, right? That Starbucks is a brand that has, they sell more than just coffee, right? You can buy hot chocolate. They have like holiday flavors. They've got limited edition things. They've got frappuccinos and cold brew and tea and all sorts of stuff, right? And that's just the drinks. You can get cake pops, you can get sandwiches. They have snacks, cookies, etc. as well. So they were looking to expand their reach by identifying needs of customers. That maybe customers were coming in for coffee, but they also wanted something to eat for breakfast, or they were on their way out and needed something for lunch. So you see that this menu has expanded over the years from just what was originally a coffee brand to something that really reaches a wide audience of people. So they could do more than just coffee. They could sell all kinds of things for different age groups. Because plain black coffee might not be appealing to a 14 or 15-year-old kid, but a frappuccino or a hot chocolate might be. So you're expanding your audience, you're expanding your reach, and even with the development of social media, and you look at some of the drinks that Starbucks and Dunkin', I guess maybe, but more so Starbucks, that they are like Instagram ready, right? That these drinks look really good in those clear cups. They're colorful, they're customizable, they're creative looking. And what happens with that? Users post their content on social media, and that's how the word gets out. So there are a lot of things going on here that we're trying to target those audiences, and through the products are able to reach those those different groups. So as you are working through thinking about target audiences and that breakdown, that Starbucks, like any other brand, is going to think about how they can reach those audiences based on those demographic, psychographic, and behavioral elements. And so when you're looking, just as an example here, that perhaps maybe if you're looking at Starbucks, think that or sorry, not Starbucks, but looking to get audiences to perhaps think about vegetables in this example here, that the demographic information when it comes to looking at how this particular demographic shops for organic vegetables, may be that you're looking at, specifically at moms with kids who have kids between the ages of 6 and 11. And what more, you may find information about how the psychographic, the lifestyles, the values, the activities of that demographic tell you something about whether or not that group of people is going to buy organic groceries. And in this instance, we see moms who are busy juggling a career and family, yet strive to feed their families organic meals. So once you know that information, you can decide how you target the marketing, the advertising, the reach of your message about organic meals, organic vegetables. And then you can kind of break it down again in that behavioral category to see who's purchased in the past 7 days, who's purchased organic vegetables, and maybe who's visited a health or nutrition website, right? So all of this stuff can be collected and can help with the process to find that information out. So by collecting all of that information, we gain insight, right? The insights into your audiences. And so we can learn specific information about who these people are, who is buying the products, who is reacting to the messaging. And so looking at the observations versus the insights, we can say that, people are habitual coffee drinkers and design consistent behaviors to serve their habit, right? So if you look at your consumers and how people drink your coffee, you can find ways to get that message out there, right? To get people into your store, and what sorts of products they'd be willing to buy. And so, looking at that observation, seeing how people, navigate that space, what they do, how they do it, can give you some help in determining what would be most useful for the for the audience as a whole. And then when you're thinking about insights, you're looking at how how coffee is consumed, right? So drinking coffee is a ritual for some people, and so it's more about the experience, and how it's done, and the products themselves, and that is how you can kind of consider the differences between observations and insights, that could help you target those different audiences, right? That maybe you have people who feel that coffee is a ritual versus somebody who just does it out of habit. And that can be, valuable information to help with the marketing and the messaging that you get out there. Oops. Okay. And so, when we are collecting this kind of information, Nielsen is a great example of a company that collects the demographic and psychographic information to tell us something about the people that consume TV. Nielsen is the company that does the ratings for top television shows for the week, and how many people watched and how many people tuned in, and in this case they're collecting, in this example here, streaming information, data about streaming different TV shows. So in 2022, Nielsen collected the demographic information here. Women 18 to 34 in 2022. What streaming shows were they watching? And this is the rundown of what they found, right? So that the top 4 or 5, we've got Grey's Anatomy, Gilmore Girls, Stranger Things, CoComelon, New Girl, etc. But how many, and then it tells you where, right? So where are we watching? Mostly Netflix, as you can see here, and how many episodes or versions, because some of these are films here, and how many minutes did people spend watching these top 25 TV shows. And so if you look at this, you can gather some insights into what people, women specifically, 18 to 34, are consuming, right? Why is Stranger Things up there next to CoComelon? That's a children's TV show, right? So what can that tell you? What does it, what can you make sense of with this data? Again, you can see Friends on here, right? Friends is a show from the 90s. What is the impact or the reason that this demographic is interested in the show Friends? And what does that tell us about the behaviors and the way that women 18 to 34 spend their time streaming? So the culminating thing here when we talk about audiences and we talk about analytics and the data and the behaviors and things like that is this kind of big amorphous concept known as big data, right? And you've probably heard of it. It is the sort of the collection of all of this information, right? All of our habits, the things that we interact with, the stuff that we click on, the ways that all of this information is kind of tracked and curated for our habits. If you look at any of the social media platforms that we've discussed, kind of throughout the course here and in other classes, all of those companies are collecting habitual data from us, right? The things that we like, the stuff that we follow, the things we engage with, and they're creating profiles about us, right? And it's not meant to sound like some wild conspiracy. This is the fact, right? Facebook got into some big trouble a few years ago for doing this and then selling that data to companies that then, try to cater and provide information. And, it's a whole big ethical situation here. But, your Google searches, all that information is what's known as big data. And I've recommended a documentary for this week called The Social Dilemma. If you are looking for, well, no, in week 3, recommending, it's called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix, but is a fascinating documentary about how these companies are using big data to cater to our every sort of interest and desire online. And it will tell us, and it tells you sort of just how these companies are using this information to get us to buy things, to think certain ways about things, to engage with content. And it's a real ethical kind of dilemma, as well as, they call it the social dilemma. But it's what is the responsibility of the social media platforms and of Google in collecting all this information on us, and what are our rights as individuals using these platforms. So it's really something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we're talking about these things, from a business standpoint, that the even bigger businesses like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and whoever else are also doing a very similar thing with that information. And so even kind of like, focusing in on this a little bit further, is that we have what's known as first party, second party, and third party data. And all of this information is collected from those platforms, that analytics information behind the scenes, and tells companies, right, marketers, social media platforms, something about us. And so the first party data is going to be anything that information that a marketer, right, or a company has based on how you engage with that particular marketer, right? So if you follow Warby Parker on Instagram and you like their photos or you share some of their content, that they are able to collect some information about you as a user, who you are, based on that particular company, based on that relationship. Your second party information is going to be anything that kind of works through an intermediary. I would say Facebook, right, is that intermediary there, that Warby Parker can collect that data from Facebook, get more information on who their users are, who their followers are, what their shopping habits might be, and make some profiles, get some characteristics and some psychographics of who their users are. And then the third party data comes from these aggregators. It's a little more abstract. It's sort of the the collecting of all various information from a variety of sources to help kind of tell a marketer something about the users. It may not be the most reliable information. It may not be the most detailed, but it is something that can kind of show some sort of insight into who those consumers or customers are. So when you're thinking about your campaigns, you really want to think about your audiences, who it is that you want to reach, how do you want to reach them, how can that socio-demographic information, that psychographic information, behavior information tell you something about your audiences? What are their motivations? Who are they? What are they interested in? And how can you kind of meet those needs and help those individuals solve various problems of all kinds, right? Even if it means the problem is needing coffee at 6 a.m. on the way to work. How can your company help do that and make that particular step in their day-to-day routine something that is much easier? And so all of that information, of course, is collected. It tells us something about who the users are, when they buy, how they buy. And I didn't mention, but I think interesting, right? The app collects that information too. So if you're using the Starbucks app, they can tell you, they know, what time of day are you ordering from Starbucks? What are you buying specifically. What days of the week are you most likely to go into the store? So all of those things can be used to help the provide that information to reach us as audiences. And what do we, how do we feel about the sort of ethical situation that arises with companies knowing just that much information about us? So I've recommended The Social Dilemma in week 3, but if you have Netflix, it's highly encouraged to take a look at it, check it out, and see what you think about this relationship between social media companies and us as consumers.